Hello there, my friends. It has been a lot longer than I had planned since my last video. I posted that first long-form video onto YouTube, and then life got crazy. I kept meaning to get back to recording videos, and I didn't. And now here we are, a year later, and I'm finally putting up my second long-form video on YouTube. But better late than never, right? I thought this time around it would be fun to share some of my hand-drawn art with you. For 2 years, my family has had the privilege of having a booth at our local Renaissance Fair. We took a break last year, but are back at it this year, and so I really need to get busy and make sure that I have enough artwork to sell at our booth. What I've done in years past is gone to thrift stores and other places and found unique looking picture frames, and then I'll bring those home and fill them with my hand-drawn art. Usually I take a look at the picture frame and plan an art piece that coordinates with the mood or the feel of the frame. This particular piece, I did not do that. In fact, I didn't even measure which frame. I just kind of had this scrap of nice paper that I thought, well, hey, I'll just use that and eyeball it. So unfortunately, at the end of this process, I did end up having to trim the picture a bit to get it to fit in the frame. But live and learn. Next time, I will be a little more organized and plan things out a little better. So for this piece, I'm kind of using a reference photo, but I wanted to really make it my own, especially because this is artwork I'm going to be selling. I wanted to just have a model to kind of guide my drawing, but I didn't want to make it exactly like the picture, which actually works out really well for me because I'm not always great at replicating things. But I just loved this photo of this girl with this beautiful long red hair, and so I kind of used that as the jumping off point for this piece and kind of did my own thing with it. I thought it would be a good idea this time around to give you guys a bit of an update on how my writing and my art has been going, especially since it's been a full year since the last video. Shortly after I shared that video to YouTube, I was able to attend the conference that I first had attended 10 years prior, and I was able to teach my very first class at a conference, and it was so exciting and so encouraging. I met a lot of wonderful people and also had a lot of familiar faces there. I even ended up getting a few art commission projects out of the class, and so that was really exciting. But perhaps the most exciting news from that conference is that I was able to meet with a literary agent who is now representing me. It was such an exciting, incredible thing, such a God moment, just the way everything was orchestrated. We met and talked at the conference. She was interested in my current children's book idea, and we had a follow-up Zoom appointment about a month or two after the conference, and then she offered me representation. So we have been working together on that project. It is out on submission to 10 different publishers. We have not heard anything yet. That's kind of the way this business goes. One nice thing about being at this for so long is I've realized that it takes a lot of patience, and the timing is slow, but then when it's right, things happen. So I am so incredibly excited to have someone in my corner on my team helping me to get my work out there, and we'll see what happens. My agent does not have experience representing artists, so at this point in time, I am just being represented for my writing, but everything was so clear. I was very confident saying yes. We really just clicked. We get each other. We both love 80s things. In fact, one of the ways that we connected at the very beginning was I had brought a lot of my artwork stickers with me to give out, and she chose the drawing sticker that I had done of Rainbow Bright and Strawberry Shortcake. And so I knew as soon as she picked that, okay, I like this lady. So it's just really exciting to have such a kindred spirit as an agent. So with my agent, I'm focusing more on writing, but I also have had some really exciting opportunities with my art. One of the advantages of not being represented with my art is I get to pick and choose a lot more what projects I want to take on. One of the people that attended my class had this really great idea for a children's book, and she approached me after the conference and showed me the manuscript for her book, and I loved it. I could just see the illustrations. I thought that it would be a really good fit. So at the moment, I am in the middle of working on illustrations for her children's book, and I am so excited to work with her. It is an independently published book, so she will have the illustrations and then work on getting the book published. So I'll be sure to update you guys on that. I've had several opportunities to do independent illustration projects. So this is, I believe, the third book I've illustrated since my last video, and I have at least 3 more in the books and possibly more coming in the future. So that has been really exciting. It's been a challenge and it has stretched me, but I love working on illustrations and helping make people's dreams of their book come true. And it also has worked out to be very helpful for me as far as getting to attend more conferences where I can make more connections, because these illustration jobs pay for a lot of those conferences that I get to go to. Speaking of writers' conferences, I have the opportunity to attend several this year, and I am so incredibly excited. At the end of this month, I will be at the Vision Christian Writers Conference at Mount Hermon. That is the same conference I taught at last year. This year, I get to attend and teach again, so I'm very grateful for that opportunity. Mount Hermon is a very special place, and I am always grateful when I get to return. In April, I have the opportunity to teach at a small writing retreat in Oklahoma. It will be a maximum of 15 people, and I get to teach 2 classes and also be a mentor to the attendees. It is called the Inspiration Christian Children's Author and Illustrator Retreat, I believe. I know for sure it's Inspiration, INKSPIRATION, which I think is such a cute title. It is headed up by the leader of my critique group, one of my online critique groups, who is just absolutely lovely, and I am so excited to get to finally meet her in person and also to travel to a state I have never been in. And then in June, I'll be headed to yet another state I have never been in. I'm going to St. Louis, Missouri for the Realm Makers Conference. And this is a conference I haven't attended for several years, especially because I've been more focused on my children's writing. And this one is more for speculative fiction, usually novels, YA, those sorts of things. However, on a whim, this past year, I entered my YA novel that I was working on before I transitioned over to children's into a contest called the Aurora Contest. And I happened to tie for first place in my category, which I'm still reeling over that. It was really exciting though, and just after some prayer and some wide open doors, it seemed like a good idea to go to the conference that the contest was tied to. It's called the Aurora Contest, and it's put on by Realm Makers. And so I am gonna go ahead and bite the bullet and go. I'm really excited to get to connect with a lot of writers that I know and a lot of writers that I don't know, and just to experience this conference once again. One really fun fact is one of the keynote speakers was one of my first teachers at Mount Hermon, and I have not seen her for over 10 years. So I am so incredibly excited to see her and to catch up. In November, I'll be attending the West Coast Christian Writers Conference in Roseville. This one is another favorite for me. It's smaller and more intimate than the conferences at Mount Hermon, but it has a lot of the same people, and I love the Roseville area. It's a place that I've traveled to a lot, and I just love the people that put on the conference. I'm really, really excited to make those connections again. Every time I go to these conferences, it feels like a great big family reunion for my found family in the writing world, and I'm just so incredibly excited to get to see everyone again. So now that I've updated you on most of the writing and art things, although I'm sure I've forgotten some, maybe it would be a good idea to talk a little bit about my process here on the video. As you guys saw in the earlier footage, I always start with a pencil sketch, and then I outline, usually with my Micron pens, as I used in this. I really love the Micron pens in brown because it's just a little softer than the black ink, and I love that effect. Then I do kind of a very light erasing. If you erase too hard, then the pen comes up with the pencil, which is not helpful. So once the line art is done, then it's time to lay down some color. I am using alcohol-based markers here. I have a combination of Ohuhus and Copics, and I absolutely love these. They give a very soft, almost watercolor effect, but as I mentioned in my last video, I am really horrible with paintbrushes, so I love the fact that I can get that effect but have a lot more control, because I'm way better with markers. So alcohol-based markers work best if you go light to dark, and they also work best if you add the darker shades when the lighter shade is still wet, which was a real learning curve for me when I tried working with watercolor, because with watercolor you want to let it completely dry for the most part, with shading at least. I am not by any stretch of the imagination a watercolor expert, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I just remember really struggling with that when I did one of my major watercolor projects. So with the Copics or the Ohuhus, or whichever alcohol-based marker you use, you can get really inexpensive ones, FYI, at places like Ross and TJ Maxx. So if you're interested in trying some alcohol markers but don't want to invest in the more expensive ones, those off-brand ones are a great way to start and just play around with them and see if you like alcohol-based ink. But as I was saying, with alcohol-based markers, you want to start with that lighter shade, and then you go in with your next dark shade and add that while the lighter shade is still wet. And then you can go back with the original lighter shade and go over that darker shade, and it's going to blend it beautifully. Typically for my skin, I try to have at least 3 different shades, sometimes 4. For this drawing, I actually added some blue undertones to the skin to make it a little more lifelike. And then you'll see that I'm using a whole ton of colors on her hair. I love drawing redheads. I don't know why, maybe it's all the years of watching and reading Anne of Green Gables, but I've played around a lot with red hair, and I found that when I use a variety of colors, some yellows, some browns, some oranges, and then some deep reds, it really makes it more alive and multifaceted. And so I had so much fun playing around with that on this picture here. A lot of times with my hair and skin that I'm drawing, I'll go back with those lighter shades. Sometimes I'll go back with the darker shades and then do that lighter shade again. But I always like to end with the lightest shade because it just blends everything so nicely. And now that we have her hair done, I think this is when I start working on the sky and some other things. I think this, yeah, but I was struggling with the recording of this video and figuring out how to get everything in the frame. It's been a while, obviously, since I've done a YouTube video, so I hope you guys will forgive my less than stellar recording skills. Ah yes, so now we're working on her eyes and some of the other little details. I think I do some refreshing with a pen at some point, I'm not sure. Like I said, I was definitely struggling a bit with this recording and just trying to figure out how zoomed in. I was worried if I had the whole picture in the frame, it might be hard to see some of the more detailed work I was doing. So feel free, if you want, in the comments to say what you prefer when you watch a video like this. If this works for you if you'd rather have it completely zoomed out so you can see everything I'm doing, because obviously, as we can tell here, there were some things that did not make it into the frame of the video. But now we're working on the flowers for her flower crown. I wanted this to be just a very soft, romantic piece, very flowy, and I had already decided I was going to give it an ocean view in the background. So trying to pick colors that would go well with that. And I think this is where I realized that the picture was not in the frame as much as I wanted, so I started moving things around a bit, but obviously still working on some coloring out of bounds. But here we are working on some details of the face, filling in. One of my favorite things to add is freckles. I usually use several different colors that match the hair, and then I try to be as light with my hand as possible, and then after I've done all the freckle dots, I will go back in with the skin tone and color over it, and it just blends the freckles in quite beautifully. So now we are focusing more on the flower crown, getting that all filled in. I wish I'd taken a little more time with the flowers here, or used a reference for flowers. I just kind of did a basic, these are flowers in this flower crown. They're not actual flowers, so don't look too closely. But I tend to be a little impatient with those elements and aspects of things. That is something I would like to work on and improve, is trying to be a little more detail oriented in areas that I'm not always as detailed. I kept trying to show you guys the colors of the markers I was using. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But I figure, if you're really curious to know what colors I'm using, you can go through this video and pause it at all the times that I show you the color. And sometimes, I'd have to keep moving it because it wouldn't focus on it. And what you're not seeing behind the scenes here is all the times my markers were rolling off of the desk. In fact, that's why you see now that I have them in this little clear tote thing here, because it kept them from going all over the place, which made it a little more difficult to see what colors I needed and what I was doing, but at least I wasn't constantly picking up markers off the floor. So at this point, I'm finally starting on the background. I kept it pretty simple. Like I said, I wanted to do a seascape, and so have my beachy tan colors and then several different blues. I guess I'm still on the tan. But I tried to do some nice lighter blues for the skies, kind of almost a green blue, is what I ended up choosing, and then a darker blue for the ocean. I definitely love the alcohol-based ink for backgrounds, because even though it's a marker, you can get a really nice, flowy, smooth color instead of streaks or whatever like you would have with a normal marker. Now I'm moving on to the ocean once I realize I need to move the picture because it wasn't in the frame. One of the things that I found challenging with this was choosing background colors that didn't blend in too much to the colors I'd already selected for her clothing and her flower crown, and even the sand color. The first color I chose blended in a little too much with her hair. So I think it ended up okay, but I definitely struggle. One of the things about being a self-taught artist is I tend to struggle with things like color theory and just those basic foundational building blocks that you get with professional art training. So a lot of my stuff is just trial and error, and sometimes it works, and I think this one worked okay, and sometimes it doesn't work so well, but that's how you learn, right? So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how she turned out. So now we're coming to one of my absolute favorite parts of doing any drawing, and that is adding all of the details at the end. Right now I'm going over the hair again with my Micron multiliner and just adding little extra strands and tendrils, which is one of the things I love to do. I think it gives the hair a little more life. And then I'm taking my white gel pen for my absolute favorite part, which is adding the highlights to the eyes. It always makes them come to life. I'm also using the gel pen to add some baby's breath type floral accents to the flower crown. Again, not really based on real flowers, so don't look too close. But I just find that adding these little touches with the gel pen really help. And then I'm also using that same gel pen to give the illusion of waves in the ocean. And yes, at some point I do move it up so you can actually see what I'm doing. I definitely used a more concentrated area of gel pen where the sea meets the shore to give the illusion of the foam on the beach. And I also absolutely love my golden Sparkle Pop gel pen from Pentel. I love adding little golden flourishes. One of the things I have to be careful of is not adding too many. Sometimes I'll add golden strands to the hair, and it can look really cool, but sometimes it's a little too much. And now we have the golden sparkles here, and you can see the full effect of everything. This is before I tried the frames and realized, I made it too big, but you know, I didn't waste this scrap of paper, so that's a win, I suppose. Well, we're just about at the end, so I want to thank you for joining me today for another arting adventure, for listening to my rambling for 20 minutes, and I am looking forward to creating more videos for you. I promise it will not be another year before the next one. Thanks for sticking with me, guys, and have a wonderful, whimsical day.